Management of Natural Resources. I'm Chinmay and welcome back. Our Mother Earth, a magnificent planet with a diversity in resources. So is said beauty of nature is characterized by its wonderful diversity. These resources are divided among natural and the man-made resources. Meanwhile, we are studying about the sustainable management of natural resources. These resources include sunlight, atmosphere, water, land, vegetation, animal life, etc. Well, all the things that exist without any actions of humankind. These content mainly includes the management of natural resources, forests and wildlife, water, coal and petroleum, a quick overview and people's contribution and what we can contribute as a citizen of the country. So without any further delay, let's start. Living in harmony with nature is not new to us. Entire natural world be in harmony, which is reflected in the famous phrase in Sanskrit, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. That means the entire earth is one family. We should also think about how we ought to be using our resources so as to sustain them and conserve our environment. We shall be looking at our natural resources like forests, wildlife, water, coal and petroleum and see what are the issues at stake in deciding how these resources are to be managed for sustainable development. We often hear or read about environmental problems. These are often global level problems and we feel helpless to bring any change. There are international laws and regulations, and then there are our own national laws and acts for environmental protection. Awareness about the problems caused by unthinkingly exploiting our resources has fairly been a recent phenomenon. You must have heard about the Ganga Action Plan. This multi-crore project came about in 1985 because the quality of water in Ganga was very poor. Coliform is a group of bacteria found in human intestines whose presence in water indicates contamination by disease-causing microorganisms. Here's a graph of total coliform count levels in Ganga. And there was the dumping of other pollutions like garbages, ashes, and unburnt corpses. There are some measurable factors which are used to quantify pollution or the quality of water that we use for various activities. Some of the pollutants are harmful even they are present in very small quantities and we require sophisticated equipment to measure them. The pH of water is something that can be easily checked using universal indicator. You must have come across the 5 R's, that is refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose and recycle. Now the question arrives, why do we need to manage our resources? The answer is simple, because there are no unlimited and with the human population increasing at a tremendous rate due to improvement in healthcare, the demand for all resources is increasing at an exponential rate. The management of natural resources requires a long-term perspective so that these will last for the generations to come and will not merely be exploited to the hilt for short-term gains. Our ancient literature is full of such examples where values and sensitivity of humans towards nature was glorified and the principle of sustainability was established at its best. Forests and wildlife. Forests are biodiversity hotspots. One measure of the biodiversity of an area is the number of species found there. One of the main aims of conservation is to try and preserve the biodiversity we have inherited. Experiments and field studies suggest that the loss of diversity may lead to the loss of ecological stability. Stakeholders may be the people who live in and around the forest department, industrialists, and wildlife and nature enthusiasts. Well, we have seen how the resources got depleted. But what led to the exhaustion of these resources? Well, the most important and major fact is that before the British came and took over most of our forest areas, people had been living in these forests for centuries. They had developed practices to ensure that the resources were used in a sustainable manner. After the British took control of the forest, which they exploited ruthlessly for their own purposes, these people were forced to depend on much smaller areas. Then, killing the innocent tigers, rhinos, 120 a day. They never had any innocence towards the poor animals. British imperial history is truly a form of contradiction prejudice. The forest department in independent India took over the forest from British, but local knowledge and local needs continue to be ignored in the management practices. We need to accept that human intervention has been a part of forest landscape, and we need to use these resources with due caution for economic and social growth and to meet our material aspirations. Participation of the local people can indeed lead to the efficient management of forests. You must have heard about the Chipko Andolan movement, that is Hug the Trees movement, was the result of a grassroots level to effort to end the alienation of the people from their forests. Water for all. Water is a basic necessity for all terrestrial forms of life. The human intervention also changes the availability of water in various regions. A study of rainfall patterns does not reveal the whole truth behind the water availability in various regions in India. Rains in India are largely due to the monsoons. Irrigation methods like dams, tanks, and canals have been used in various parts of India since ancient times. Kuls in Himachal Pradesh. Parts of Himachal Pradesh had evolved a local system of canal irrigation called kuls for over 400 years ago. The water flowing in the streams was diverted into man-made channels which took this water to numerous villages down the hillside. Dams. Dams are barriers which stop the flow of water and ensure the storage of adequate water not just for irrigation but also for generating electricity. You must have read about the protests made by Narmada Bachao Andolan, that is Save the Narmada movement, about raising the height of Sardar Sarovar Dam on the river Narmada. Water harvesting. Water harvesting is an age-old concept in India. Gardens, tanks and nadis in Rajasthan, bandaras and tals in Maharashtra, bundis in Madhya Pradesh are some of the ancient water harvesting including water conveyance structures still used today. Now we come to yet another important resource, fossil fuels, that is coal and petroleum, which are very important sources of energy for us. The management of these energy sources involves slightly different perspectives from those resources discussed earlier. Coal and petroleum were formed from the degradation of biomass millions of years ago, and hence these resources that will be exhausted in the future no matter how we carefully use them. Another way of looking at coal and petroleum is that they are huge reservoirs of carbon, and if all of these carbon is converted into carbon dioxide, then the amount of carbon dioxide in atmosphere is going to increase, leading to intense global warming. Thus, we need to use these resources judicially. Sustainable management of natural resources is a difficult task. In addressing this issue, we need to keep an open mind with regard to the interests of various stakeholders. We need to accept that people will act with their own best interests as the priority, but the realization that such selfish goals will lead to misery for a large number of people and total destruction of our environment. Going beyond rules, laws and regulations, we need to tailor our requirements individually and collectively so that the benefits of development reach everyone and for all the generations to come. So, as a student, let's lend a hand to conserve our natural resources. Thank you.